All right, and we're live. So, how's it going, guys? Welcome to a new episode of Spartan Ownership. And this is an amazing episode here because I'm here with a very special guest, Master Chim from the Pressure Project and podcast. And I've been following him for several years now, actually, and had the chance to meet him, too, at the PressureCon event, which was an amazing event. And Master Chim, can you tell the viewers a bit about what you're all about?
Well, number one, it's a pleasure to be here. It's so cool seeing guys that have been involved in the content and having met you at PressureCon, seeing you actually getting out there and doing something. So kudos to you, and I appreciate you inviting me. So gratitude for that. I'm Justin Garcia, Master Chim from the Pressure Project. ThePressureProject.com is where you could find our content. I have been rambling so much I forgot what you originally asked, Max.
It's all good.
I wanted to make sure I thank you, so I forgot the question, but I thanked you.
It's all good. I was just saying that present yourself about just kind of give people kind of your brief who you are statement.
Right. So I'm basically a nobody, I'm just some guy on the fucking internet. I run the Pressure Project. The Pressure Project started out as a podcast, a mission, if you will, whose goal is to sort of inspire men to reclaim their masculinity, to bring the function back into masculinity, and to sort of take the essence of what masculinity is presented as today away from the people's hands who have no business controlling it in the first place. So it started off really as this sort of ranting catharsis, on audio files type of thing. But it's grown into, we have the podcast now, we have the radio show, we have the members site, we've had PressureCon. We're just about to host our second Riddle of Steel knife forging event. I've connected with people all over the world. I've connected with people from all over the world that are here, like yourself, right? So I started off this with the best of intentions, but not really much ambition. But it has just exploded, and I've just been surrounded with positive people, strong people, and I've gotten to very humbly and graciously play a part in a lot of men, getting their asses back on track.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And and you also talk a lot about tribe, and you just bring masculinity back to where it kind of came from, but you also add and integrate lessons from all types of cultures and philosophies, which is cool. So, one thing that you always talk about in your podcasts is how you make people feel uncomfortable throughout your daily life. You almost specialize in it. You have no issue kind of putting the spotlight on people. And it's kind of hard for a lot of people that were raised in today's day and age, because most people are raised to be polite and very nice, So I guess, how do you assert yourself more? Because a lot of the guys listening here are people that are a little bit socially awkward and stuff like that. So how do you become more assertive as a man and basically give yourself that authority to be more comfortable just asserting who you are and what you want with others?
No, great question. It's it's really I do it to an extent that I don't think people who aren't driven to do the things that I'm driven to do, people who don't share a mission with me, shouldn't necessarily look to adopt this aspect of my personality. I am the guy that if it was up to me, I would lift weights, train fighting, and talk about masculinity all day, every day, right? I've already made enough babies with my wife, so we could throw that on the shelf for now. But this is all I want to do. Most people, what they want to do is they want to sort of install enough of that and apply enough of that stuff to their lives to where they aren't sort of being held hostage by circumstances that are probably in their control. So for me, I'm a button pusher. I'm the guy that, looks to push buttons. I'm the guy, I'm wearing my Trump shirt right now. literally an hour ago, 2 hours ago, I was with my brother, and I see some guy, looking at my Trump shirt, and I'm in New York right now, which is like hilarious because it's like just fucking triggering people all day. And the guy looks at me and he gives me, this just really like, I can't fucking believe this guy's wearing this shirt type of look. And I look at him, I make eye contact, and I go, "You're voting for Trump, right?" He's like, I'm just fucking with you, and I walked away.
Right.
So he looked like an idiot in front of his friends. He didn't know how to process it. But the whole thing is, I'm not going to try and start a fight with the guy. I'm definitely not going to start an argument with the guy. But I enjoy constructing these little moments where men are like, "What the fuck just happened? Why do I feel like I just got robbed? But the guy didn't touch me. The guy didn't hit me. Like, what just happened?" So I like, I consider myself to be a very, very courteous person. Like, my manners are actually quite impressive. It's please, thank you, excuse me. I'm a firm believer in having manners, and I've always referred to manners as sort of the poetry of society. It's how we deal with one another eloquently, even though we don't know each other. We have this commonality, of the way that we conduct ourselves publicly, and I'm a firm believer in that. But one of the things I always do is swing at every pitch. So if there is an anomaly in somebody's behavior, I'm going to bring attention to it. I'm the guy that I can't be in line in, let's say, a store, and the guy in front of me has half of his ass hanging out of his pants. I go, "Excuse me, sir." He turns around. I go, "Your pants are falling down. I could see your ass from back here." Right. Like, he put them there. We all know he put them there. Right. But I create this moment that he doesn't know how to react. So for me, in order to sort of navigate dealing with people who are what we would consider the uninitiated, I have to sort of play this game just to be able to make it productive, because the one thing I never want to do is become desensitized. I never want to see the guy being an asshole and not say anything. I never want to see, the guy with his ass hanging out and just say, "Oh, that's just what they're doing these days." Like, I don't ever want to be that guy, but I'm also willing to accept and acknowledge the things that I have to go through because I'm choosing to be who I am,
Right. It's like you kind of know the price that you got to pay to be like that, and it's right. Like a responsibility in a sense. Yeah, and there's risk involved.
Right. There's a guy, Jim Rohn, who passed away. He was Anthony Robbins' mentor. Great dude. You should watch his stuff, read his stuff. Incredible dude. But he was talking about a contemporary of his one day named Zig Ziglar. Now, Zig Ziglar is the salesman of salesmen. He is the guy that you go to learn how to be a salesman. At least his book. He also passed. But Jim Rohn would talk about Zig Ziglar when he gave presentations. And he would say Zig Ziglar was a devout Christian. And he would talk all over the world about his salesmanship and his sales training. But he would always bring up his Christianity. And Jim Rohn, during his own training, using this sort of anecdote to illustrate a point, said, Zig knew that as soon as he mentioned Jesus or whatever Christians talk about, that 20%, 30%, 40% of the audience immediately turned off. He knew that, and he chose to do it anyway. So very similarly, not to compare myself to those two, heavy hitters, but in a similar vein, I understand that some of the things that I do sort of disqualify people's attention or even, initiative to listen to my stuff. I understand that. But, at the end of the day, I'm going to be who I'm going to be, and I live and die by my legacy, my reputation, and who I am,
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And, you also talk a lot about tribe and the importance of tribe in today's day and age. And you also even have a video series on your website that people can have access to called The Loyalty Matrix, which I really, really enjoyed. And I even tried making a tribe based off of the principles that I learned in that video series. I had some ups and downs with that because I didn't know how hard it was to make a tribe, because it really does require a lot of people to believe in the same vision and to kind of put aside their differences in a sense. So right now I'm not necessarily in a tribe, but I would bet that most guys listening aren't in tribes either. Although there are a few that have developed tribes, surprisingly. But what advice would you give a young man who wants to be part of a tribe? Like, at what point should he seek out and join a tribe, or at what point should he create his own tribe?
Well, what I would say first and foremost is the type of tribe you are a part of is infinitely more important than just being in a tribe versus not being in a tribe. There are plenty of instances where you are damn well better off being by yourself than being with a tribe that doesn't have a congruent sort of mission or identity to the things you want to be a part of. You know, I could tell you, hey, listen, I know this group of guys, they're all male prostitutes, and they have a pimp and they have sex with old men in rich neighborhoods. They'd love you. Why don't you come on down? You said you don't have a tribe. But, like, I could do that, and it's like, whoa, you know, like, I'm good, thanks. So what type of tribe, and I use extreme examples just to get the point across quickly, the type of tribe we're a part of is almost more important than just making sure we're in a tribe, you know? So being that that's the case, you know, I wouldn't put the horse or the cart before the horse. I would tell people what they should be doing is looking to aspire to develop those attributes, to develop the mindset, to develop the mannerisms, to become a person that would only be accepted in a quality tribe, but would only want a quality tribe to be accepted into. You know, so I'll give you a good example. I grew up playing basketball, right, in New York City. And I'm a 5'5", you know, midget, but I know how to play basketball. I grew up playing basketball. I was always an athlete growing up. But when you play basketball in New York City, it's sort of like the hub of basketball in the country, if not the world, especially when I was growing up. And I would travel either for school or, you know, just vacation, whatever the case was, to different areas of the country and world. And quite often I would look to play basketball. And when I played around the world, a lot of times, like, the guys just sucked, you know, and I felt it's like if I could play and look like a superstar, I would feel good, but it was a fraudulent feeling because here I am with these guys that, you know, didn't grow up playing basketball, aren't as good as the people I'm used to playing with. So it would be a sort of false glory that I would get. Well, what I would want to do, what I would rather do, and what I think is more congruent with how the young man in your scenario should aspire to, you should look for the hardest games with the best players. You should look for the guys who are the most masculine men according to your assessment of what that actually is. You should be looking for people that are stronger than you, that have a better mindset than you, that are, you know, more dedicated and more disciplined than you. All of the attributes, the virtues, if you will, that you're looking to develop as a man, you should aspire to find people who do them better than you do, because that is the name of the game. You know, you never want to be the smartest guy in a room, because why are you there? You're there for your ego. You know, and then what winds up happening is when you surround yourself with these people, you feel this fire inside that forces you to step it up. It's like you don't want to be the wink link in the chain. You don't want to be the guy that everybody's looking at. It's like, oh, this fucking idiot's here again. You know, you don't ever want to be that guy. So that's the sort of steel sharpened steel sort of, you know, a game that is played when people try to build strength internally first before they look to seek it out in others.
Right. So basically embody the traits that you wish to find in other men and become the sort of person first before even...
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, absolutely. And, you know, and understand, you know, it's important that we are, I wouldn't say to the level of self-deprecation, but it's important that we understand that we are all works in progress. You know, there's a difference between, you know, me saying, you know, listen, this fucking guy can't even squat his body weight, and listen, this guy thinks being able to at least squat his body weight is irrelevant or bullshit. You know, you hear Jack Donovan has a great concept. He calls it flamboyant dishonor, and it's one that I always talk about. It's when the guy who cannot achieve the glory or the virtue of accomplishment in the eyes of other men instead of looking to build those things, he condemns them. He's the guy that says, "Oh, look at the big tough guy." It's like, when did being a big tough guy become a bad thing? Pretty fucking convenient, by the way. So he's the guy that looks to just condemn and insult and really devalue those things that he just doesn't have or feels that he can't acquire. And that's much different from the guy who is just starting out on a rung in a ladder, but continues to climb no matter what.
Definitely, 100%. And just on a side note, I started saying 100% a lot more ever since I started listening to your podcast.
I think Pat has us all fucking brainwashed.
Yeah.
I think we all are.
Definitely. And basically, you spoke about steel sharpening steel and about climbing that rung of the ladder, and which basically is a good way to segue to the next question, which is, what are some of the most reliable ways to basically increase your masculine energy and to become better at being a man? Okay,
little audio blip there. Repeat that question, please.
No problem. So what are some of the most reliable ways to basically increase your masculinity, increase your masculine energy, and your capacity to embody those virtues, basically?
Okay, so I'm a firm believer, and I have to find a better way to say it because I'm never quite comfortable saying it this way, but I will because it's the best way I have right now. I'm a firm believer in respecting the function of masculinity. Now, to say that I'm a firm believer in it doesn't mean that, listen, I believe cheeseburgers are better than pizza. This isn't an opinion thing. It is my position, my control, if you will, my hypothesis of what exactly masculinity is at the core level. So when we look at the function of masculinity, and it doesn't take much to sort of just, close our eyes and imagine a time where, we didn't have the supermarket, we didn't have, the policeman, we didn't have, the fucking microwave, we didn't have, all these different things that we had to do for ourselves. It doesn't take much to realize that, all right, men physically stronger, not the child bearers of the two genders, the things that separate men and women, it's sort of like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. We would be the ones that would do the things that were more dangerous, would do the things that would help provide for the mother and child, because of the childbirth and child rearing process. It sort of makes sense. And then when you look at that framework and you sort of understand what kind of makes sense as to what the male role would be in that type of environment, well, then it's a very short jump to start saying, well, what are the attributes to really maximize, how effective and productive we actually are in those roles. So we start talking about, perseverance and, honesty and loyalty. I mean, I can get into the 9 noble virtues, of heathenism if you want, but when looking at those things, it only makes sense that, listen, the guys that are better at being these certain ways just happen to also be better at being functional men, right? So nowadays what winds up happening is, we're so disconnected from the functional aspect of masculinity. We don't have to kill the animal. We don't have to raise the crop. We don't have to fend off the invaders, at least not yet, Max. But for now, we don't, right? But when we remove and we disconnect ourselves from that functional aspect of being men, we sort of start deciding what we think is masculine. And we're not sort of held to task comparing it to its actual function in reality anymore. So you have, women who think they're men. You have men who think they're women. Well, sure. Men and women don't even, because of science, don't even need to have sex anymore to have babies. Right. It's like we are really removing ourselves from the functional necessities of how we've developed as a species, right? So when we look at masculinity and what is masculinity, I think everybody does themselves a great service to start at function. Is this a functional thing that I want to be a part of? I know a lot of guys out there nowadays, and I won't name names, but a lot of guys who, they represent the macho, I'm a man because I know how to fight. I'm a man because I know how how to lift weights. I know I'm a man because I know how to fuck people up. But where are your wives? Where are your children? You know, where are your parents? Where are your family? Where what are you doing where, you know, you're looking at families being together tribally? What are you doing in terms of setting an example for a young boy or a young girl? I have a daughter now, right? And it's funny, my whole life I would bust all my friends' balls that had daughters because I wound up having 3 boys first, right? So I had my daughter, and holy shit, it's all true. You know, like I have yet to say no to her, and it's just an incredibly different amount of a different type of energy in my house now that she's here. And you know, that is part of being a man, by the way. You know, being able to not only teach your boys how to be, you know, strong men and better men, functional men, but it's also like people always asking me, and I've mentioned this before on my podcast, it's like, oh man, your daughter's going to be a killer. She's going to be an MMA fighter. Your daughter's going to be what? No, my daughter isn't like if she wants to do it, then it is what it is. But I'm going to make sure she's going to be a good wife. I'm going to make sure she's going to be a good mother. I'm going to make sure she understands through the modeling of my behavior and of her older brothers, she understands what a good man is and what a proper strong man does. Like these are the things that, you know, encompass, you know, in the big picture what masculinity is. You know, I've always, you know, criticized Hollywood because Hollywood doesn't understand the subtleties and the nuances. Why? Because they're all fucking gay guys, you know, like, you know, the majority of the people that are putting money here and there are either women, gay guys, or people who are so removed that they don't know which way is up anyway. What do? They represent masculinity in terms of violence, you know, bravado, machismo, you know, this, you know, the toughest guy on the block is the most manly. Now, you know what? I like the guy, you know, I like Charles Ingalls in A Little House on the Prairie. I don't know if they had that, you know, where you grew up, but you ever heard of Little House on the Prairie?
Not really, no.
So it was a book series by a lady, Laura Ingalls Wilder, and it was about the sort of American frontier and small town, you know, farms and, you know, big-ass hats, getting up to feed the chickens, all that stuff. And you had, you know, in that the male model of the strong father, you know, strong husband, supportive husband, busted his ass, made sure everybody was safe, made sure he spent time with his kids, he read to them, you know, they talked about morality, what was right and what was wrong. It's like that to me is the pinnacle of masculinity. You know, not the guy that knows how to kill everybody else. Right. Because you wind up, you know, if all you could do is kill people, you know, then that is your use. By the way, when we talk about the success of our lives, the success of us as a species, it's really procreation, right? It's looking to expand ourselves effectively so that our mission, our identity extends through time, right? Infinitely. That's the ideal. That's the perfect, you know, aim and goal. It's not to just kill everybody else. It's not to be stronger than everybody else. That is certainly an aspect, a component of it. But, you know, nowadays it's, you know, a lot of guys, they think, and this, I think this is a good point. How about that for a pre-frame? I'm about to make a good point, so no matter what I say in your head, you think it's good. Right? A little NLP right there. Right? But I think a valuable point, one that I tried to make, is nowadays you have a lot of young men who are, you know, finding themselves struggling with, you know, feeling like more of a man. You know, that like they think that they know they're not doing it right. They know that they need more. They know that there's something more that they should be doing, and they know they're not doing it. Because it's in their DNA, right? They have these longings and desires and inclinations that they don't really understand. And what happens is nowadays there's so much information and content out there that's just telling them to learn how to fight. That's just telling them, you know, to be, you know, almost arrogant with their appearance. And, you know, it's such bullshit. You know, be healthy, be strong, be powerful, but more importantly than that, be respected. Be responsible, be successful, be effective. These are the things that really matter. This is what masculinity is. You know, I grew up, and, you know, you followed my podcast. I was a very, very violent young man. You know, it culminated in me, you know, getting locked up as a teenager. You know, like I've been through some shit. And at the time, I thought that's what I had to do. It wasn't until I got locked up and realized, wait a minute, this is a fucking failing formula I'm running right now. I need to step it up. It wasn't until I had that sort of epiphany in the middle of jail that I realized there had to be more to this. You know, there had to be more than just beating people up, because where's all my success? Where are all my friends? It wasn't there. It was quite the opposite, actually. People saw me, it's like, I was like the Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. I was the guy that it's like, if you invited me to a party, it's like, oh, fuck, just keep him away from everybody, because I'm going to wind up hitting somebody. I was that asshole when I was a teenager, And as I've gotten older, as I've sort of, I think really raised my own bar of expectation, I realized, not everything in life is a nail. You can't be a hammer all the time, and sometimes being able to establish a rapport with different people, different energies, it's infinitely more important than just crushing everybody,
Right.
And, and I think that, today's young men need to understand, and I say that as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, as a, former professional MMA fighter, as a power lifter, as a school owner, as, all these, like, I got enough street cred, to go around, so it's not, I'm some little guy that's never gotten into a physical altercation that's sitting here saying there's more to life than fighting. It's like, no, you got to learn how to fight. I'm not letting anybody off the hook for that, but there is a bigger picture,
Definitely. I love that. That's a really good summary, and definitely something I could refer to, because it definitely is easy to get confused about how to increase your masculine energy these days. Because I could see a lot of people just thinking it's all about being alpha, and it's all about just getting really big and like walking with your chin out and stuff like that. But I like the integrated view you got, and which kind of leads me to the next question, which is, and you did mention one already from a book you mentioned, but what are some examples of great men who embody most, if not all, of the traits that men ought to embody, so that people listening, myself included, could look at these men and know that that guy right there is someone I could emulate without any question?
Great question. And, it's hard to narrow it down, because I think that so much about people throughout history, great men throughout history, is a product of this long-term game of telephone. It's like, it started off, this guy won a bar fight. Then 20 generations later, he beat up a dragon with a spoon in a cave underwater. It's like, this is how history tends to be.
Right.
I will say, there were some people who had some great things to say and really represented certain values that I think people need to look at. I think, looking at the Stoics in history, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, the way that some of these people, the Stoics, sort of looked at life and reality as, I think, succinctly and effectively. And I mean, looked at life effectively. They didn't see boogeymen when none existed. They didn't see a carefree experience where responsibility lied. Like, there wasn't a aspect of who they were that allowed them to waste energy on things that would never sort of prove fruitful. So looking at the Stoics, specifically, Marcus Aurelius' meditation, Seneca, I think that's a great place to start. I myself am a very big proponent of Nietzschean philosophy, right? So I'm a very big fan of Friedrich Nietzsche's writings and a lot of the concepts that he put forth in his writings. I understand what he describes, as the will to power. Nietzsche was a very big proponent of the biological aspect of who we are, as am I. I think we, when it comes to, and I'll use sex as an example. Sex could be something that we use the spice of emotion to sort of make more alluring, to make more enjoyable, to really just, put it in a, if you think about it functionally and to sort of take the magic out of it, we could trick ourselves into thinking it's something more than it actually is. Or we could reduce it to whether it's going to get artificial insemination. You could do it the Jew way with the circle in the sheet. There's a lot of different ways that we can get the job done. But it doesn't change the actual function of what it is that we're doing. And I think biologically, we have to start there, because therein lies the goals, therein lies the missions, right? The functionality, what I had spoken about earlier. So I'm a big fan of the Stoics because they don't make mountains out of molehills. They understand that, I'm going to go out today. There's a famous quote by Marcus Aurelius, and you listen to me, know me long enough to know that I never remember quotes verbatim, so I'm always paraphrasing everything. But pretty much, one of his meditations, he said, I'm going to go out today and I'm going to meet a bunch of assholes that hate me, that want me dead, but it is what it is. I still got to go out. Another Marcus Aurelius paraphrase quote is, why would somebody want to spend all day in bed? Why wouldn't somebody get out to actually participate in the whole reason that they exist? The whole reason you exist is to go and do something. Like, why would you reject your nature? And it's just a clean way of really getting things in priority and proportion in our lives that I think is lacking. And I think that's why, if you look at the business world, and there are plenty of other podcasts, I think of Tim Ferriss off the bat. He himself actually, I think, produced an audiobook series on Seneca, Letters of a Stoic. It's really held in high esteem in the more successful people that are running around the world today for a reason. As far as Nietzsche is concerned, I like to consider myself something of an expert on violence, something of an expert on what he would call the will to power, understanding, transcending into a higher level of being. I think that higher level of being, who he called the Overman or the Ubermensch, is something that, when we look at all of our future strengths, right, all of the gaps, the holes in who we are, when those things are not so much filled or covered as they are sort of evolved out of and eliminated, we'll become more as a people. And I think it's a very positive, empowering way to conduct oneself. I think, if somebody is, let's just say, physically not strong, I'm never going to say to them, stop being weak, right? I'm never going to define them and sort of identify them by their shortcomings, by the attributes that they're looking to overcome or avoid or eliminate. It is a much more empowering perspective to suggest to that person that he goes to the gym, that he goes and does the positive thing, the positive reinforcement of driving towards a goal, driving towards becoming more. I think we need to be more positive, but so much of that is sort of lost in how people look at themselves in life. Stoicism, Nietzsche. These are the things that I think people should really start reading, if they're not already, because, as you know, and I talk about this all the time, mindset, is where it's at. Mindset, it's like you could have the most expensive ship, in the ocean, but if you have a captain that does not know fuck all about, how to handle that ship, the ship is practically useless. Yeah. Well, our minds, are the captains of our ships. To another point I had made earlier about having children. Just recently I heard I read on social media a man who I actually have a great deal of respect for talk about how he and his wife don't want kids. And it was sort of like a humorous, no, it's I love playing with kids, but then I give them back to their parents. I love doing that too. And, when I look at somebody who espouses that publicly as a sort of take, assessment of who he is, I feel bad for them. I feel bad for them the same way I would feel bad for a couple who couldn't conceive, who physically couldn't, become pregnant. Because the thing is, whereas in that latter couple's instance, there may be some sort of, biological, flaw or deformity or injury or whatever the case is. In the former, and the person that I was just talking about, you know, to me, they're suffering from mindset. You know, it's like a woman's womb is barren, the man's mind is shit because he's healthy, his wife is healthy, and they're saying, "Now we don't want to have kids." By the way, it's like a quick little litmus test of the value of your positions, your priorities. It's like, what if everybody in your tribe did exactly what you were doing? Would the tribe be weaker or stronger? Well, if you're the guy who's sitting out saying that me and my wife aren't going to have kids, you're fucking up, man. You're fucking up. Now, I'm not even saying, listen, you got to have kids if you don't want them. But what I'm saying is you should always champion the values that make your tribe stronger, which, whether you like it or not, is always going to be having people you care about who share your identity and your values, having children, you know, as an example.
Right. Awesome. Wow. That's an interesting point of view, and I can definitely see how a lot of people have that mindset of not wanting to have kids. But on your podcast, I heard you mention several times that if you're someone who is strong and who is on the journey to becoming stronger every day, why not have kids and basically perpetuate that cycle and instill that into the next generation? So I could definitely see where you're going with that, and I agree with that. And speaking of kids and wives and husbands and stuff, what role does a woman, or do you think that a woman should play in a man's life for the most part when he is on a journey to becoming stronger? Does she also embody the same kind of, because philosophy tends to be quite masculine in my opinion. A lot of the philosophers are very masculine, and it's just, I've heard more than once that men are the true romantics in terms of like, we're the ones that are really like about philosophy, mindset, code of honor and stuff like that, and it's not as common for women to have that. So what's your view on women's role in a man's life who does have a code and who does have all these thoughts?
Well, I did an episode on love, right, in the Pressure Project, and I have always, contended that love is really a form of codependency, and with codependency, we look at a vulnerability on both parts, both parties, that is created because there is a synergy that results from that bond, from that relationship. So obviously we talk about codependency. It has a very negative connotation to people, and I use it in the most general of senses. But I think I make myself a little vulnerable when I allow myself to love my wife, when I allow myself to put myself in a position to basically take on the responsibility of providing for her, for protecting her, for making sure she's good, right? I think I take on a responsibility and therefore a vulnerability in doing that. I think she does the same thing with me when she allows our bond to basically use her body to procreate and have children. That is an incredible vote of confidence, on the woman's part for the man. It's one of the things that is so disgraceful about men who abandon their children. It's because you are not only abandoning the child, but you are abandoning a trust that was given to you that probably trumps, no pun intended, that probably trumps any trust that could have been given to you prior to that. For a woman to look at you and say, I am willing to give you a child, when the fuck is a man going to get that amount of confidence from another human being? If somebody's willing to sacrifice their body as a vote of confidence, and how they feel the value of being around you is. So when it comes to women, the role of women, in a man's life, I think first and foremost, a woman can never attempt to make a man less of a man. I tell everybody, and I've made jokes about this, I've had serious conversations about this. If you have a girlfriend, a wife, a significant other who chooses or who wants you to participate in less manly endeavors, wants you to sort of give away some of your masculine attributes and rituals, you need to find another woman. And the reason I say that, it's because when you do have an investment, when you are creating this vulnerability and investing in this relationship with another person, it's an investment. We use that term for a reason. You are, you are hoping and planning that there is a return on investment, that there is a synergy as a result of this, vulnerability that you are investing upon. And I think when we look at women, first and foremost, men need to make sure that the women that are in their lives are not asking them to be less of a man. I know a lot of just weak-minded men who have their women telling them what to do, yelling at them, embarrassing them in front of their friends. The women don't understand the dynamic amongst men. When they yell at a man in front of his friends, they're very in their own headspace. They're looking at everything in terms of them. They don't realize that they're sabotaging their man's position in that group of individuals by doing that. So your woman should not only expect you to be less of a man, but a woman should also look to empower you. The woman should also look to maximize that synergy that she's capable of bringing to your life. Aside from that, I think there's two things that I asked my wife when we were on our first date. And for the listeners that don't know, I met my wife and was married about a month later. And we've been married almost 13 years at this point. And, on that first date, I asked her, I said, are you going to breastfeed? And are you open to homeschooling? And two very curious questions. But the reason I had those questions, now mind you, hopefully she's not listening to this, but not the first girl I asked those two questions, by the way. But I knew in those two questions, I would create the impetus for a conversation that would allow me to hear if she was going to be congruent with what my goals were as a man, So my wife, college educated, was a school teacher in Brazil. She's given me 4 beautiful children. She mans the home. She spends the majority of the time with the kids. With 4 kids, I've maybe changed 5 diapers, and probably 2 of them was because she got stuck in traffic on the way home, but she is an incredible mother. She's an incredible homemaker. It's a term that, the feminazis really want to sort of denigrate and sort of make an insult. I think it couldn't be further from the truth. Being a homemaker, having the ability to make a home. When I go home, I walk into my house and it's like, I'm finally here. And it's because the environment and the energy that my wife provides and creates in the home is that, assuring, and really appeasing, to all the other stresses that we deal with. So I think there needs to be a complementary energy. Obviously, the people that think, oh, well, men and women are the same, I mean, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I've always said before, and you might have heard it on another conversation, when people ask me, are men and women the same? I ask, are firemen and police the same? Mm-hmm. And the response you'll get to that is, well, in what way? Exactly. In what way? Are we talking about, having children? By the way, women have the fucking monopoly on that, Right. When it comes to physical strength, men are stronger than that, Men are stronger than women. It's just, we understand that they each are just different, It is somewhat apples and oranges, and we need to embrace that, empower that, and really maximize the effectiveness of those roles. So the woman needs to really embrace the responsibility to step into what I see as being very, very, large shoes to fill, in the home and in the family. What I tell my wife all the time, I cannot do what you do. She doesn't fucking sleep. I don't know when she eats. I see everybody else eat. I never see her get to eat. She's sick. She's got to take care of everybody. When I get sick, I'm a big fucking baby. I'm like her largest child in bed. Make me soup. Rub my back. The TV's too loud. Now I can't hear it. I'm that guy for 2-3 days until I get better. So I can't do what she does. So I think that, I have a tremendous amount of respect for women and for all they do. But the woman that chooses to not do that, you haven't earned any of my respect yet. Because just like the man I expect to be a man, the woman I expect to be a woman. And that's not an insult. That is a challenge, if nothing else.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think that was a great point right there. And which kind of got me thinking too about, and I'm going to paraphrase here myself. You obviously know the movie Fight Club, right?
Say again, which movie?
Fight Club.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And basically, I was talking to someone who read the book the other day, and he said that somewhere in the book, the main character asks Tyler Durden something about marriage, and Tyler basically says, what in this world of basically feminization, why would a man get married again? And basically, I see where he's going with that. I mean, obviously, you have a way better position on marriage, and you approach it from a very strong perspective. But on that same note, what are some of the ways that even men who are privy to these ideas are basically, what are some of the ways that feminism and feminine energy and feminine conditioning is basically kind of weakening men without them even knowing it? And even to the guys that are privy to this kind of stuff. Like, what are some of the backdoor ways that feminism is kind of affecting men, in your opinion?
Well, I think if we don't, okay, I'm always trying to use metaphors and different ways to illustrate a point. So go with me for a second.
No problem.
You and I are in a room. You are, let's just say, a city boy. You have never seen a tree. I have a picture of a tree. You've seen pictures of trees, but you've never actually seen a tree. And I begin to tell you, do you know what a tree is? And you say yes. And I say, well, do you like trees? And you say, yeah, I like trees. And then I say, well, what I love about trees is the sound they make, and you're like, well, I didn't know they made a sound. All I've ever seen are pictures. Oh no, they make beautiful sounds, beautiful. And before you know it, I am able to construct or reconstruct what your impression and your definition, the identity that you assign a tree is. Now, the problem in today's society is you have women talking to males about what masculinity is. You have feminists, and these are men or women, males are actually feminists. They are talking to young men about what masculinity is. But just like in my example, in my hypothetical, you've never physically seen a tree, in today's society, alluding to something I mentioned earlier, we don't have this sort of litmus test of reality, of function, that are telling us whether or not what we're doing is right or wrong. It's you could have a man nowadays who dresses as a woman and says he's a woman, and by the way, you have some of them that actually look like women who can live a woman's life in 2016. They could go to Starbucks and drink coffee. They could date. Maybe give a guy a fucking blowjob on the second one, not marry him because they don't want to get committed. They could, join book clubs and join Facebook groups, and they could go on women's trips and join women's, clubs and all these different things. But today they don't need to marry a man. They don't need to have a child. They don't need to raise a child. Like, there are functional aspects of what the role or the identity of a woman is that is not sort of put in the face of today's woman. They are not held to the standard of function. So it's very hard nowadays to remind people, men specifically, let's talk about the males, to remind them what masculinity is, because it is so few and far between that their lives are sort of butted up to reality, and they're forced to be functional. That to me is the biggest argument for martial arts training, weightlifting, survival, hunting. Like, one of the things that I do all the time is I won't sleep in my bed. I'll pick a corner of my house and I'll sleep on the floor. I'll sleep in my office. I'll sleep in the hallway of my school. I'll sleep on the bathroom floor in my home. It's not why? Just because I don't ever want there to be some place that I feel like I can't survive. Like just so I appreciate the nice, comfortable bed. One of the things I don't put out there too much is I don't take like all the showers that I take are cold. I take cold showers. I allow myself 1 or 2 warm showers a week. And that 20 minutes where I'm taking a warm shower, I almost feel guilty at the end of it. It feels so fucking good,
Right.
But without the contrast, and I talk about in a podcast a lot, creating the contrast of experience. Without that, people don't understand, what the identity of masculinity is. It used to be in a functional world, when we were at a functional time in our existence, the man who was a bad man or bad at being a man was dead. He was exiled. He was murdered. He was robbed. He was, he never married because no woman wanted to be with him. Right? Why do women, whether they understand it or not, I think it's almost, mostly accepted as non-controversial that women like confidence. Why do women like confidence? Because it is a biological attribute of men who can provide for them. It's this guy has been around the block and he still feels good about his place in it. He's fucking capable. Women appreciate that. Why do we enjoy women? The woman who says, I'm a strong woman, I'm an independent woman. Well, get the fuck away from me. If you're independent, what the hell do you need me for? Men innately like a woman who makes them feel needed. Makes them feel like they have a vulnerability that is reserved for us. And this is a biological thing. It's not a value judgment, but it's based in function. So today's man, getting back to your question, what does he get distracted from? He gets distracted from all the things that want to define what only reality can define.
Wow.
And speaking about masculinity, function is step 1. You cannot get beyond that until it is addressed.
Wow, that's awesome right there. A lot of golden nuggets right there. I mean, we got function as being basically the almost like the litmus test when it comes to masculinity, and also I like the contrast. You said the contrast principle. You called it
Creating contrast.
creating contrast. Yeah, I actually do the same thing with cold showers. Every time I take a shower, it's basically cold. And I heard about sleeping on the floor I think it was from Seneca, actually. I think he mentioned that. And how he eats barley bread and stuff like that, and just eats shitty food basically sometimes to just kind of remind himself, like, look, all this luxury and stuff is not going to be of value when I'm put into a situation that demands a degree of comfort with discomfort. So I really like that, and it's great to see that you're doing that, because sometimes I wonder if I'm putting too much pressure on myself by doing those kinds of things, because let's say you come home after work and it's been like a long day or you had a bad day, the last thing you want to do is have a cold shower. But knowing that you do that basically gives me that extra push, which is awesome. And you also mentioned, like, you mentioned all these things, and let's say you're a guy and you got a girlfriend, and you basically just can't stop talking about this kind of stuff, because I'm sure your wife basically has heard you speak about this tons of times. Should a man teach these kinds of things to his wife to a certain extent, just to make her also feel the capacity to deal with certain situations? Like, would you have your wife, for instance, would you ever challenge your wife, for instance, with a task like, honey, let's sleep on the, hallway floor tonight? Or would you kind of reserve that for yourself more?
Well, I share everything I do with my wife. So my wife, she was throwing ice into one of my ice baths a few days ago, without ever having taken an ice bath herself, to the best of my knowledge. So she's very supportive of what I do, and there have been plenty of things where, I have endeavored to get some sort of benefit, and have done so successfully, and she's seen a successful model of this formula working and has adopted it herself. I write the majority of my wife's gym routines. Why? Because she respects my ability to lead her to her goals. So there are plenty of things that, tools that I've used to, get a benefit that she's also done. But I will say, I think that, and this is another thing, we're different. Men and women are different. I'm, using me as an example, me and my wife, as much as we are very compatible, peanut butter and jelly have two distinct tastes, by the way,
Right.
but they go so well together, so that is how I think one should be looking at his relationship with his wife. Don't look at it as, let me try and make this jelly taste like peanut butter and this peanut butter taste more like jelly. It's, let's really enjoy the fact that we are so complementary to one another's energy. So there are certainly things that we share with each other, but when I look at the couples that, they and I'll get super fucking corny for a second, the couples that wear like the same outfits and like are always holding hands, and like, to me, I look at that and I'm like, that's fucking gay, But my wife is right next to me and it's like, that's fucking gay, So she and I have a very compatible energy, but we're never going to do the things identically because we are so different individually. And, my wife, and I've said this to her in person, so if she's listening to this, whatever, deal with it. Horrible jiu-jitsu student. Why was she a horrible jiu-jitsu student? Because she couldn't take her husband yelling at her the way I yell at all my other students. Now, mind you, I was treating her exactly the same, but she was never really able to just separate, the husband Justin to Master Chim, the coach, It was like we're at home and, oh, fucking Master Chim. Oh, you're Master Chim. Sorry, I can't do you, man. And it's hilarious, But what is she doing? She's preserving her right to be who she is, and not to be a sort of conduit by which I navigate reality, Like, she's her own person with her own goals, her own mission, and we're there to complement one another, not to really monopolize each other's identity.
Mm-hmm. So just on that same note then, would you say that it's okay to basically challenge your woman with certain tasks that might be deemed masculine, but to make sure that there's that balance of understanding that she's her own person, that she's also a woman, and that we're not the same and we should never be the same, but there's definitely some value in kind of challenging her occasionally. Would you say that that's fair, or?
I would, only because, if you're somebody who believes in pressure, right? So obviously one of the mottos on the Pressure Project is pressure to power. And it's a mindset, it's a philosophy, it's the way we look at things. It's what I think is one of the fundamental formulas for improvement, for becoming more powerful. So in order to maintain, and I think this is the lens that I would look at it through, it's really maintaining a compatibility between us that she needs in some way to be able to deal with who I am. I'm always, the first thing she tells me, and complete double standard in my home, by the way, the minute she tells me, oh, I'm not feeling good, I look at her and I go, oh, you're not feeling good? You gonna be all right? Should I call the fucking, the mortician? Like, that's who I am immediately. When I'm sick, if she says that to me, I lose my fucking mind. I throw a little hissy fit. But she needs to accommodate just my philosophy as I need to accommodate hers. So there are going to be times where, let's just say, let me give a good example without having to sleep in the backyard. You could have okay, I'll give you an example. We had a former landlord, right? Before we were homeowners, we rented, and when we had rented, we had an altercation, not a physical one, but a thing with one of the landlords, and he was supposed to fix something. He said we were supposed to fix it, and he said something that was disrespectful, and I told her, if he doesn't apologize when I see him, I'm probably going to break his fucking jaw. Now, this is about 12 years ago, right? So that's my, I'm a different person now, whatever. But no, don't do that because he'll just, and she had a way to deal with the situation that was very feminine that probably would have worked. But it's not the way I'm going to deal with it. She can bat her eyelashes and, do all this and get out of a parking ticket. I don't. Right. I can't. So there are going to be times where I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and she's going to have to deal with it because I need to maintain my identity. And that basically just goes back to making sure you have a woman who allows you to be a man. Doesn't expect you to be less of a man to accommodate her. So would I pressure her? I would say only in those instances where I felt pressuring her was needed in order to maintain the compatibility.
Okay, that's definitely moving towards me understanding this more. But what I'm specifically referring to, I guess this is a really kind of specific question, and it has a little bit to do with me and I guess certain relationships I observe. But like right now, I'm dating a girl, and sometimes I find myself like trying to make her do something to make her stronger. So like let's say she can't open something, or she can't fix something that's really, really simple. I challenge her and I'm like, come on, you can't freaking do that. Like, what is that? And part of me is like, just be the man and go open the jar for her. But another part of me is like, she should be able to challenge herself a bit here too. So would you like promote that kind of feminine energy and that dependence, or do you sometimes push for her to develop some of that pressure for herself?
I would take a step back and I would say, isn't it curious that we would think, and I'm not throwing you under the bus,
no problem,
which is usually a segue to me throwing you under the bus, where you think, having her open the jar is somehow masculine, and how, you're the one that should be over and opening it. Remember what I said earlier? The male role, the female role are very much based and founded upon function. And there are plenty of functional things that we could think of. And you're not married with children, but you still can see the function in a woman being physically capable, a woman being able to open a jar, a woman being able to, to shoot an animal if she needed to. It was, the big thing I always talk about with men and women, somewhat, in the melodramatic terms. When the invaders are at the wall, the men run to the wall, the women run to the kids, But once we're there, we each have our own responsibilities, So I don't think that you expecting your girlfriend to open up a jar, as an example, is you imposing any sort of masculinity on her. What you are doing, I would contend, is really embracing and promoting a compatibility of a strong mindset. You and your male role, her and her female role. It's not do you lift weights at all, Max?
Yes.
What's your bench right now?
Right now,
Spotlight.
Man, I got to think here. I haven't benched in a while, but it's probably like around 160,
Make something up,
180.
Max.
Yeah, 180, I'd say.
About 180. Okay. Yeah. So if you were working out with a buddy of yours, what is the cutoff where you would be like, fuck, this guy is really fucking weak?
In terms of weight?
In terms of weight, poundage on a bench press, where your friend goes to bench and he's like, I can only bench this. And maybe you don't say it out loud, but at least in your mind, you're like, holy fuck, this guy's weak. What would you say that is? Yeah,
I would say that if he has like a bar and maybe like just a 20 on each side and he can't pick that up, I'd be like,
Right, so that's like 85 pounds, right? Yeah. So bars, 45, Olympic bar, 45, another 40, 85 pounds. Yeah. Well, would you feel the same way if, your woman couldn't do 85 pounds? Or would you look at it as, you know what, she's a woman, she could probably do a little bit less. Not looking to persuade you one way or the other. But what would you say? Would you hold your woman to the same standard of that friend of yours benching 85 pounds?
When it comes to like physical training, I wouldn't hold her to the same standard.
So, and therein lies the difference. the function of being able to bench a lot, right? To being able to bench a man's weight is wholly different from the strength expectation of being able to open up a fucking jar.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So when you're expecting your girlfriend, you better be able to bench at least 85 fucking pounds. You know, like now, all right, now we're getting into what you were trying to sort of design the scenario of earlier, where you're trying to force or impose a sort of masculine expectation upon her.
Right.
Because where is the function for that? But I think when we look at function, again, that's what I'm trying to drive home. I don't think opening up a jar is inherently masculine.
Right.
It's like, well, what if I wasn't fucking here? Like my wife has 4 kids. You better know how to open a fucking jar.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or my kids are going to fucking starve,
Exactly.
So function, again, I think leads how we should be assessing these little dynamics between men and women.
Right. I definitely just got a lot of clarity on that answer right there, with that answer right there. And it's about almost function, like you just said, and also I like what you said about the different standard. Like you wouldn't hold your woman to the same standard at all, but there's got to be a minimum sort of standard for function, and I could definitely relate to that. Coming towards the end here now, I kind of want to talk about your vision and what you're doing with the Pressure Project. And I've already seen things happen because I was there, I would say, from the beginning when, the average views on YouTube was like less than 100, I'd say. And now, I've been to PressureCon, I've gotten shirts, I've listened to live streams, I've connected with people that I met there. I've basically seen you evolve. And what is the next step with the Pressure Project? And is there any like projects that you would like to mention that you're like, what's the next thing that you're working on? Where is this going? What's your vision in terms of long term with this?
No, good question. I think first and foremost, this still very much serves as a catharsis for me. It is. I'd rather be talking about this than talking about sports, than talking about my bills, than talking about the weather, than talking about some other insignificant or completely just frustrating aspect of life. I find this to be very empowering. I find this to be a sort of pursuit of information and knowledge that allows me to better understand myself and become a more functional, powerful man. But in terms of the actual podcast, I think I enjoy doing this so much that I am in pursuit of a way, constantly in a pursuit of evolving the way that I allow myself to be able to do more of it. So I sell T-shirts. Why? Because when people buy T-shirts, it allows me to buy more equipment. It allows me to expand the website. It allows me to produce more content. I have events like the PressureCon and the Riddle of Steel seminars. Why do I do these? Well, it not only is a revenue generator for me, but it also allows me to now take all of these men that I'm eliciting to all these concepts and actually share an experience, a functional, real experience. And from personal experience, the conversations we're able to have, in the middle of a field, in the middle of nowhere, are wholly different than the conversations we're having, in the infinite, internet universe. So it allows us to bring what we're talking about into the realm of where we're applying it functionally. And I think that's very, very important. So for me, it's all about, getting myself more powerful through the evolution that occurs through these conversations and through just participating in all the things that I do. I think I become a better man by doing it. But then it's taking those people who are actually ready to do something that's a little bit higher on the significant scale and creating opportunities for them to do that, i.e. the membership site and then PressureCon, Riddle of Steel, things of that nature. I've spoken to people who initially found me through the Pressure Project who, we've done a lot of things that have nothing to do with the internet, that have nothing to do with anything on fucking Facebook or the website, or just two guys connecting, great compatible energy. I was able to do things for him. He was able to do things for me. This has happened multiple times, whether it's, business, stuff. I'm helping him with his business, to, helping somebody, just get through a tough time, and these are things that nobody ever hears about on the podcast. Nobody ever hears about on Facebook, because it has nothing to do with that. It's just me being, sort of privileged enough to have a life where I'm like a magnet for masculine, endeavors, and I get to surround myself with such great people, which surround yourself with great people, you find yourself, in the midst of great opportunities. And I'm very much benefiting from that. So for me, I don't know what the next thing's going to be. I always tell Pat, you know what? I can't wait for a fucking radio or a radio station or TV show to say, listen, we'll pay your bills every month. Just come and talk about this shit all the time. And I would do it in a heartbeat, because this is what I love doing. But it's not the big revenue generator that some people think it may be. So I do have to dabble in plenty of things that allow me to feed all my children's.
Right. I got you. Cool. Awesome. Well, and you're still obviously planning on doing more pressure cons, I hope, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome. Bigger and better.
Awesome. And so what are some of the ways that viewers can basically join the Pressure Project and get access to your content and stuff like that?
So if you want to find me on Facebook, I'm very active on Facebook. MasterChim.com will bring you to my Facebook page. If you want to listen to the podcast, you can go to thepressureproject.com. That is the main website. The Pressure Project members.com is our membership site. Memberships start at $10 a month. At this point, I think we have like 750 to 800 hours of content. And it's all stuff like this. This is all we do. It's not me playing the fucking ukulele for 2 hours. It's all powerful conversations that, we try to have with some great guests. I know you and I now have some mutual guests, on our respective shows. And if you want to find us on our radio show, you can go to the Pressure Project on YouTube and get updates for that. And Pat and I do a radio show every Wednesday, noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we do a blog talk radio show, and we film it in a YouTube live show at the same time. We have live call-ins. It's engaging. I think it's a lot of fun. I have a great time doing it. So I think that's everything. I'm not going to give anybody my address, so you're going to have to find me on the interwebs.
Cool. And I would also add that if anybody wants to basically start a tribe or is interested in finding out how to do so, Master Chim has an amazing video series called The Loyalty Matrix that I really, really enjoyed, where he really broke it down in like a system type way on how to start a tribe. And it really gives you a better idea on how to just, even if you don't necessarily have a tribe, or if you don't even have any people that you might want to start a tribe with, it gives you a better understanding of how to think tribally, how to think in terms of a team, even in your family if you have one. It's definitely a great resource, so definitely worth checking out on. And that's on thepressureproject.com, I believe, or?
You can go to theloyaltymatrix.com and just get the series. But if you're a member of the site, thepressureprojectmembers.com, it's in the video section for free. So either way, you get the content and I get some money.
Cool. All right, guys. So and Master Chim, after this video, I'll end it, but I just wanted to tell you something afterward. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot, and hope you guys enjoyed this, and hope you guys look forward to more content on my end. And this was truly a great talk, and make sure you took notes and you go back to this video often if there's something that stuck out to you. So take care.
Thank you.